Hi, we are live from DailyClout. I'm here with Dr. Naomi Wolf and Claire Dooley, and we're really excited to host our first live film premiere for Claire's new video called Freaks, coming out as Unvaxxed. Dr. Naomi Wolf, can you take it from here?
Sure. I want to thank Eitana Hecht for being awake at 1 a.m. from where she's broadcasting from the state of Israel. I want to thank Claire Dooley so much. And just before I turn it over to Ms. Dooley, I just want to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited to honor her and her work with our first public DailyClout premiere. I've known Claire for, some months. But it was just when I saw her work as a filmmaker that I realized what an extraordinary talent I was privileged to have encountered. I think Claire is one of the most gifted filmmakers of her generation, and maybe other generations. But I think that she's got a really unique vision. I love an artist, and this is why we grabbed Eitana Hecht and Vigilant Fox. I love an artist who's got a fully articulated voice and perspective. She's a woman of great courage. She traveled with the truckers when I couldn't even get my fellow journalists at Legacy Media to travel with the truckers or report on the truckers for that matter. And I think she's doing great things and is going to continue to do great things. So we're really honored to have her as one of our key voices at DailyClout. And this particular video that you're about to see, I think is so moving and heartbreaking and well done, and raises such an important issue, which I won't anticipate. I'll let Ms. Dooley speak to that. But the last thing I really want to say before I hand it over to Ms. Dooley is, for 35 years, I've cared about the issue of young women's voices. And, I feel like young women have to waste 10 years being taken seriously. And what is beautiful to me about Freaks, in addition to the many important topical issues that it raises, is that Claire, is obviously a young woman, and she's presenting a platform for other young women in this film to speak, as you'll see. And it's so beautiful and important that we're hearing the voices of young women, especially at a critical time in history where young women are being particularly targeted. They always are, but they're targeted in new ways right now. Having said that, that's just preamble. I'll turn it over to the great, irreplaceable, extraordinary Ms. Dooley.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I did not see that coming. And it's an honor to work with DailyClout and you, Naomi. And thank you for being with us too, Eitana, at 1 a.m. Especially the piece that you guys are about to see, it is something that was weighing on me for some time, having these two very close friends that I took very seriously, who are in their mid-20s. And it's not a piece that I would say is in general a more libertarian approach. We're really kind of hitting that middle ground where it'll probably piss off a lot of people, maybe from the left and maybe from the right too. I hope it doesn't. My goal is not to make anyone angry. My goal is to remind us of these common grounds that we have, the things that connect us and make us human. So I would love to just go ahead and hop right in. Before we do, I just want to say, I have been making films for about 5 years. I started in the health freedom kind of sector and working with making sure that a lot of the pharmaceutical products that children consume are safe, and going into the history of certain products in certain states. And then more recently, having worked with Naomi after the Trucker Convoy, I really enjoyed getting to spread out into a different genre of film. And she's the first person who ever came to me and just said, "You can make whatever you want." And I was like, "Wait, what? Like, really whatever I want?" Like, and it's true, and that has held up. So what you guys are about to see is what it looks like when you set a young filmmaker free and allow them to make whatever they want to make. And I'm proud to work with people who support art like that, instead of censoring and pushing their own agendas. So now, Eitana, ready to hit it.
All right, let's go. Freaks, coming out as Unvaccinated by Claire Dooley.
There's like this assumption that, oh, she's gay, right? Don't let her or him around the children because we don't want them knowing about that lifestyle because they're fearful that they might become like that one day. And it was exactly sort of the same thing that we got whenever we say we're unvaccinated.
I can feel it. The feeling of not belonging. No political party who listens to me. No box I can fit in. Too left for the right and too right for the left. Virtues I advocate for are used as political pawns by both wings. When Same Love came out, I cried as members of my family called it disgusting. I sought out refuge in the left. I thought they stood for the good of all, for love. But in a moment of reflection, I saw I was still surrounded by hypocrisy. Each side picking and choosing their freedoms, treating the gray areas as facts. With social media increasing our hostility towards one another, the outcome of a disagreement, of a differing political view, is a figurative death sentence. Red and blue refusing to have conversations in the name of cancel culture, bigotry, and radical conservatism. So what happens whenever you stand in the middle? What if, say, you are gay but also unvaccinated? I traveled to New Jersey to speak with my friends Riley and Irene about how it feels to be in the middle.
We had essentially two coming outs, I would say, to our family. On the one hand, when we first started dating 7 years ago, when we met in college, we had to come out to our families as gay. Post-COVID, we had to have a coming out, right, to our families again as being unvaccinated. I would say in one of those cases, we got more pushback. I played softball in college, which is like a very gay thing to do. I definitely knew a little earlier, I think, than Irene that I was gay. My mom had already known because she found a letter that I had written to Fiona Apple, who's like my favorite. She found like a letter, I think when I was like 16, that I had written to her where I think I admitted that I was gay in that letter. And when I told my mom, she goes, I know, I read your letter to Fiona Apple. And I was like, oh.
You wrote a fan letter to Fiona Apple, honey. I think I knew.
So that was relatively easy because she had already kind of been clued into that situation. But my dad, I was a little nervous for. He came up to see one of my softball games.
I was the softball wife. I was like at every game alone. Like, and I'd never been into sports. That's how you know that our love is true. Right.
But so I had invited her, but I'd also invited my dad, but I did not think both of them were going to show up at the same time. And I wasn't really prepared to kind of like come out to anybody. But I saw them, and then I saw them both kind of walking towards one another, and they ended up sitting right next to each other. On the way out, I grabbed all my stuff, I packed up, and then I walked up the hill, and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to say this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say it. So I said, hey, Dad, this is my girlfriend, Irene, and I showed her Irene, and I said, we're going to go out to dinner. And he just goes, oh, okay. And then we went out to dinner, and it was great. And so, a great time. Yeah, something, I was sort of dreading that for a long time, and it was really easy to do. And I've never had as easy of an experience as that, telling someone that I'm unvaccinated. When you came out to your family as being gay, what was the response?
It was very accepting. I grew up in liberal LA. I went to very progressive schools my entire life. When I came out and I was like, this is me, this is my girlfriend, it was met with, oh, wow, that's great. Oh, we can't wait to meet her. Like, oh, that's, like, yeah, wow. Like, awesome. And I remember having a phone conversation with my dad. He was like asking me, he was like, oh, did you get your flu shot yet? And I was like, Riley is completely unvaccinated. She's never had a vaccine. I don't feel comfortable getting it. When you say that, it's question after question. It's like, well, why? What do you think is gonna happen? I got my flu shot and I'm fine. If I'm saying I'm gay and he's like, oh, well, this is wrong and you're pedophiles and this is not, yeah, you just haven't found the right man. Like, that would be so frowned upon. So like, why is it okay that like we had that conversation when I had to come out about the vaccine stuff? I don't want to have to go into a conversation with my dad with a cheat sheet of notes of facts. Like, he should just be like, yes, I respect your decision. It's definitely something that we don't talk about, and when we talk about it, it gets really emotional.
Some people might be mad at this comparison that we're making right now, but it's one of those things that you don't experience until you're actually in it. When we were in the city, right when New York had put vaccine passports to enter establishments, restaurants, concerts, we walked through Sheep's Meadow, which is, if you know, that's probably like one of the most liberal spots in Central Park. My sign said segregation is not the solution. It was like we were just walking through like a Shark Tank. We were just like a juicy piece of meat. It was just shouting, the looks. I have never in my life felt so much like a freak than I have in that moment. We've had maybe, I would say, 1 or 2 instances of true homophobia when we were out, people saying inappropriate things to us. But I would say we have had 10 times more of that experience with the unvaccinated.
We've had 10 times more of that experience holding a sign, walking through Central Park that says no vaccine passports than we've experienced homophobia in our lives. You can take that to the bank.
Okay, let's just stop for a second before anyone jumps to conclusions. Enjoy some footage of their garden in the meantime. Riley and Irene are not saying homophobia doesn't exist anymore. What they are saying is that in a suburban area, in a liberal state, they have received more discrimination for being unvaccinated than they have for being gay. But as free-thinking people, we must hear the perspectives of everyone, whether or not we agree with what they're saying.
There's like this assumption that, oh, she's gay, right? Don't let her or him around the children because we don't want them knowing about that lifestyle because they're fearful that they might become like that one day.
We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution.
A lifestyle that is both perverse and dangerous.
Whenever we say we're unvaccinated, it's the same brick wall situation where you're subscribing to a dangerous lifestyle. And you
are a danger.
You are a danger. These things, these concepts that you believe in are a danger to us, and we need to remain pure from this dangerous ideology that you're subscribing to. So I think it's very, very similar.
We have to recognize that anti-vaccine activism, which I actually call anti-science aggression, has now become a major killing force globally. It's a killing force one deadlier than gun violence, global terrorism, nuclear proliferation, or cyber attacks. World Health Organization Peter Hotez.
Anti-vaxxers are one of the top 10 global threats.
So this premise invasion should be prosecuted.
You're endangering the welfare of society. Because that's what being anti-vax does, is endanger the welfare of society.
Society hates gay people, society hates disabled people, society hates anybody which is different. Try to target them as kind of the idea of degeneracy and disease and threats and everything.
Most vaccinated individuals dislike the unvaccinated. They commonly characterize these individuals as stupid, selfish, ignorant, dumb, unsafe, and foolish.
For generations, to be gay meant being forsaken by family, fired by employers.
As more companies put in place vaccine mandates, we're likely to see more firings.
Social conservatives who sought to ban gays and lesbians from working in schools.
Nearly 2,000 school staffers are out of a job for not complying with the COVID vaccine mandate.
Students who are found participating in these lifestyles will be asked to leave the school immediately.
238 students were disenrolled for failing to comply with the school's vaccine mandate.
I'm very concerned that we are going to perpetuate inequities with our vaccine mandate.
When we talk about the AIDS pandemic and how when there were doctors and nurses refusing to even go into the same hospital rooms as patients who tested positive.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
When you open your eyes and see that unvaccinated people aren't exclusively far right, that they are actually just everyday people, people you already know, who are afraid to speak up out of fear of being canceled, smeared, and ostracized. You'll realize you may be perpetuating the same hatred, discrimination, and unjust persecution that you have condemned in other cases in history. But to be frank, I'm not here to debate the science with you. There'll be resources left at the end if you'd like to know more. I'm here to remind you that just like our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, the unvaccinated were born this way.
And I think that if the left maybe understood that toxic situation that they're putting completely innocent people in, and smart people, they might rethink about how they react when someone tells them information like that.
To them, the issue of bodily autonomy transcends a political party. But when being unvaccinated becomes a political pawn for the left and right, Riley and Irene describe what it's like to be gay and show up to a health freedom rally.
And it's especially weird being sort of like a gay couple in this movement in particular, because a lot of the people that we find ourselves surrounded by in the health freedom movement have very strict sort of conservative values, right? They believe in the traditional family unit. I remember the first time I had brought Irene to a health freedom rally. And it was during, I think, maybe the first month of lockdowns, right after that 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We're about 100 feet away, and Irene, I can see her face. She's seeing "Don't Tread on Me" signs. She's seeing Trump 2020. She's seeing "Make America Great Again." She's seeing Confederate flags.
I cannot condone the Confederate flag. I was very uncomfortable and afraid.
And I see her reactions, and I remember thinking oh man, I'm taking her into this battle, because I just got used to that, because I was like, these people, I don't care what they think, they're on my side. We agree on this issue. I need them. We need as many people as we can. I'm not in a position to turn people away from this cause.
One of the first times that, like she was saying, we were at a rally and it was all these things that we were agreeing with and we were getting pumped up, and then it was marriage is between a man and a woman, and I was I have been so much in my little liberal bubble for so long. I couldn't even fathom that people still thought that way. And I think that speaks to the privilege that I had growing up and the privilege that we've had together as a couple, one from LA, one from New Jersey. We couldn't be more, from places where that is more accepted. But it's a complete privilege, and I was I really had to be oh whoa, this is still a thing. I know for a fact that I have less in common with these people, that the one thing that we have in common is this vaccine issue, because that was very early on. I was still afraid of getting COVID. I was I'm gonna die if I get COVID. And as I kind of broke out of that brick wall that we were talking about, if I let that go down, then I can open myself up to connections with other people in this world. Now looking back, I feel I have grown a lot from that scared and closed off girl who was yeah, I agree with you, but we're enemies. It's no, it's so convenient for me to think that these people are my enemy. It's inconvenient for the ruling class for me to think of them as my friend.
Yes. in a kind of similar vein, we experienced a similar situation, but completely flipped, vice versa. Now, I was bringing my health freedom friends into New York City during Pride, where there's a bunch of gay flags. I remember hearing what my colleagues were saying about the Pride flag. And I was thinking, you know what, if Irene had to do that and be in that uncomfortable position with people that she maybe didn't agree with, you can do that too. Why should we expect people to come from the other side to our side, but then not offer the same graciousness on our side as well? And this year, we got caught in the Pride Parade, and I will say, I did not feel I had things in common with that crowd. I felt just as alien in that Pride Parade this year that I did 2 years ago in the camp where there was Trump and Confederate flags around. I can say that I don't feel at home in either of those situations, and that's okay. I can find the good things about the people at the Pride protest, and then I can find the similarities between the people who might be holding a Trump flag. And while I don't necessarily subscribe to either camp, I do feel that I can make connections with anyone. And I think that's a powerful tool that the elites don't want us to use and know about. Because if we unify, if those two sides, whatever we can do to bring those two extremes together is a danger to them. And I'm proud to kind of be in neither camp because I know we're going to be part of the awakening that happens to bring those two camps together. Being gay, being unvaccinated, being the freak in both situations, that serves a greater purpose to mow down all of those labels that you want to put people in, those boxes that you want to put people in. It's not reality.
We can meet so many different types of people, and then we can be that example to somebody who may have a more closed mind about something. That's like, oh no, I can see this couple that they're obviously very much in love, they work well together, like we may not fit into like the traditionally masculine and feminine roles. I think sometimes we do, but it's not very clearly delineated. But I think that we can meet people who may have a different view of that, and they can kind of open their mind a little bit. And then we can also meet somebody who is totally down with that, but is not down with the unvaxxed thing. And then we can be a seed for them as well.
All of us, we are fighting for freedom, and that's what they're scared of, and that's what they're afraid of. And that's why people like Irene and I are dangerous. But we're not gonna stop. We're gonna keep going, because I do want to see that day where the unvaccinated do achieve the same level of liberation status as the gays now. And I want to see the gays achieve a higher level of liberation status throughout the world. Both of those fights, I believe, are one and the same fight.
Tell me your secret. I promise I could keep it. I got to know your weakness.
A lot of people have almost an infinite supply of hate and judgment. What if I were to say, no, my love knows no bounds? I can give you love, but I can also say, I love all of the people who have given me a hard time in the past. I'm going to extend my love instead of hate. Love is infinite, just as infinite as hate seems to be, even more so, as the hate will run out because it's energy expending, and love can renew you.
They're using these words to trigger each other. Drag shows for children, anti-vaxxer protests, Jan 6 insurrection. They're using these things as a psychological manipulation tactic, as a form of mind control, and we are falling for it. So let's break that cycle. Let's stop falling for all of these divisions, and let's break beyond that, and let's come into the new age, which is going to be led by love.
Say it so low so nobody can hear. Just give me a hint, babe. Oh, come on. Whisper into my ear. Tell me all the things that I wanna hear. Just give me a peep,
Love is going to be the answer.
Love will save the day, as they say.
I love you.
I love you too, baby. And I love you.
And we love Claire.
Love you.
Wow. Wow. Well, I saw an earlier version and done a lot since the last version. My goodness. Very deep, very raw, lots of issues you did not shy away from. Don't know what the gun is doing in the montage, but
I thought that was the funniest part. It's like peace and love. And Riley's like, yeah, I'm still grunge though.
Yeah, no, it covered such a tremendous range. And well, I know the work in both its last iteration, now the new one. And I think that it surfaces such a profound and kind of brave, scary statement that, you know, this young couple who are lesbians have faced, in their words, more hostility as being unvaccinated in the case of Riley, critical of the COVID mRNA vaccinations in the case of both the women in the couple, then they have homophobia. And when they describe going across Sheep Meadow in New York City, a space I know very well, and feeling like more hostility or distance from the community around them because they're holding up medical freedom signs, then they have, you know, by being part of a gay couple, that's pretty stunning. So it raises very important issues. I'm not, you know, people watching may agree, may disagree, have all kinds of questions of their own, but let's plunge right in. Aitana, are you able to see any of the questions, or should we just go ahead and ask Claire to speak to us?
Yeah, I think Claire should take over from here.
Okay. Yeah, just so everyone knows, that song at the end is called The Oath. I did not put the name of it, but those are two of Riley's songs that she makes. I like to say that she is everything I ever wanted out of Billie Eilish, for those who are familiar with Billie Eilish. And you can find her music on YouTube. And that's what we saw was her music video. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I did not really know what to expect from this piece. Just a bit of background on my relationship with Riley. I actually met her through Instagram. So she was involved in the health, or is involved still in the health freedom movement. And there was a bill that was going to be passed in New Jersey that was going to remove religious exemptions for schools for vaccines. So if you did not want to have a particular vaccination because it had aborted fetal tissues in it, or if you believe that a particular vaccination would violate God's perfect creation, that it would be blasphemous to get a vaccine, suddenly your religious rights are being violated. Right. And so all these people came out in New Jersey, and they stayed until, you know, midnight outside, rallied, and they ended up not passing the bill, and it was a big victory. And this is right before COVID hit. So this is in the winter of 2018. And so I had kind of connected with Riley through Instagram, and I was like, ooh, who's this cool girl with like all this music and stuff? She's got a girlfriend. She seems like much different than what you would think of the particular back then kind of more conservative groups that were involved in the health freedom movement. Mm-hmm. And so we kept in touch, and now she works with one of the health freedom groups that I work with very often. And through that, especially through the People's Convoy, we ended up communicating on a regular basis through work. And the more I learned about her, the more I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is very cool. And her girlfriend is amazing. And, you know, just they beam, as you can see in the video, love and this gentle energy and spirit. And they have a lot to say, but they have a lot to say without judgment, without hatred, without even resentment. They seem, even though these things are happening, they don't seem like they would take out their anger on anyone. They're very peaceful people, these kind of classic hippies that I always thought of. And so I called her up one day and was like, I'm working with Naomi Wolf. And first off, Riley was like, that is amazing. She's like, Naomi's my hero. And I said, we should do a piece on whatever you want it to be about. And I didn't know if that was, okay, what is it like to be gay in, 2022 and on the East Coast in America? Or, what is it like to be in the health freedom movement? And what is it like to create alternative music in the health freedom space? We didn't really have an idea of like exactly what we were going to do. And then showing up there and talking, this theme kept on coming up of discrimination, because Riley has actually never gotten a vaccine in her life.
So interesting.
Yeah, and then you have Irene kind of coming in from the more liberal spaces, was shared in the piece, who, you know, was up to date in her vaccines, and then when she decided that she didn't want to get the flu vaccine, that ended up becoming an issue with her family. And so it seemed like it was something almost therapeutic for them to do this interview, to talk it out. And we talked it out for like 8 hours, and we talked a long time that day. What you're seeing is the most abbreviated version we could get in there. And I do want to say that I said it in the piece, but I will say it again. We are not saying that homophobia does not exist. That is not what we are saying. But what we are saying is that in some places in America, in some bubbles, there are people who are experiencing more discrimination for being unvaccinated. And that is Riley and Irene's truth. And that is something that they came to me with, and I felt like needed to be discussed, especially towards the left, to kind of point out, once again, as I did in the piece, that what are we doing to people, right? When we're denying them jobs, when we're treating them as if they're disease spreaders, as if they are dangerous.
Right.
What are we doing to these people who quite literally were born that way? And that was something I wanted to discuss, and it was so beautiful because we were able to discuss that in a very peaceful, you know, kind of environment. And I hope that it starts a conversation, and that, you know, more people will be discussing it and maybe be more open-minded towards things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that's interesting to me is that from the first version to this version, I noticed the first version had a lot more, and I loved it, you know, and I hope maybe you'll consider weaving it back in someday, but a lot more of these young women kind of just very, very much being very young and talking about their families and how their dad reacted and how their mom reacted, and, you know, going to dinner with their grandma, or, you know, like it was much more, I would say, vulnerable. And it is not a criticism, because the new stuff you've put in is incredibly dynamic and goes in other exciting directions. But I wonder what, as an artist, what that decision was. Did you feel like these young women kind of introspecting in a very personal way was not as important for the final piece? Yeah, I felt the need to, and actually right before we went live, Riley had finally gotten the chance to watch it, and she called me, and she said to me, she was like, I'm really glad, you know, she was like, we said a lot that day because it did, you know, you made us feel so comfortable. And I was kind of worried about what would end up going in the piece. And she was like, I could not be happier with what you did with it, with what you took out. Right.
And so that's part of, you know, the piece, as well as being a documentarian.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of things from a lot of people, and I try not to do interviews, as you and Naomi and I have discussed, as we discussed in the work that I'm doing. I really have a problem with just walking up to people on the street and asking them questions, because, you know, they have that wall up that Riley and them were talking about. And so when that wall is down, I am trusted with a very important and sacred connection that, you know, everyone in the world has the opportunity to see. And so that person is saying, I trust you with my internal thoughts. That I'm going to speak openly to you, and I trust you to put out what is the most important and pertinent to my story. So what I have considered is maybe after we kind of do a few more of these small pieces, going back and maybe releasing some full interviews and cutting out the bare minimums. And then, with permission from the people that I talked with, putting those out, because I think the full interviews are fascinating. As you saw at the very, very end, we did a full second interview that was about 4 hours long that I only used, you know, maybe a minute of. And that was the nighttime one. So, you know, there's a lot more opportunities to put their stories in there. I just wanted to take something that would be a standalone piece for maybe someone from the left that they couldn't really latch on to anything to attack Riley and Irene.
Well, that was my follow-up question, Claire. Am I interrupting, or can I jump in?
Go for it.
And it'll be interesting to hear what Aitana thinks about this, if you have thoughts. But part of me, when I was watching I don't know how to say this. I come from the left. And, the most important thing to me, the thing that's going to sustain civilization is for young artists to speak freely and for everyone to speak freely, right? That I believe that is, we can't survive without that. I felt the moments where you put in something anticipating attacks from the left. And as a creative person, as a writer, I'm angry about that because you should be deep in, like, artists are crazy, right? And no, but seriously. And the most precious thing is that flow where the whole world is invisible and all you're in tune with is your inner voice, your vision. And it's burdensome to artists, I think, and damaging to art always to have to worry about, will this be attacked? Do I have to do a kind of they're going to say this, so I'm going to say that. It's not that there's not this, it's that there's that. I feel like that's gotten worse since I was a young creative person. How do you feel about those moments? I mean, I know you have to do it, right? But it makes me angry as someone who's really, like a fan of your work. I wish that you didn't have to think about that.
Yeah, I think that defense has been a big part of the defense is being incorporated into my work more and more as, sometimes paying attention to what people are saying about what I'm making. I, never wanted to make something that would be twisted or misconstrued into something that it's not. Particularly this piece, some of that is geared towards the media, but some of that is geared towards personal relationships I have. I have a very close friend who came out to his family as gay a couple months ago, and it did not go well. But he also was pressured into getting the vaccine and felt like his bodily autonomy was, violated. Basically it was, you get this vaccine or we don't pay for your college. So, having this friend and he is sharing these intimate moments with me, I felt the need to give that disclaimer truly and really out there because it breaks my heart to know that I still have friends who are gay who would be completely rejected by their families, who would not be shown any love, but only hate. Regardless of what you think of it morally in the religious space. That was something I didn't even want to discuss in the piece.
Right.
Because that is an individual's beliefs.
Yeah.
We're talking about people being discriminated against.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm sorry, Claire. Go ahead.
No. And so, that was kind of why I felt the need to do that, because even for the people that are in my life that I love, I wanted them to know that I still see them and that they're still represented. But I'm talking about Riley and Irene. Right.
Understood. Well, leads right into my next question, which is Riley speaks very movingly of, and Irene too, of like looking around and seeing, oh my God, these people have Trump signs that, don't tread on me signs. And yet these women, one very much from the center of the left, right? The world that I know well. And one who recognizes that this is a kind of a specific subculture. They both decide, I'm going to open my hearts to these people. These are my brothers and sisters. We're aligned, at least in these matters. That kind of begs the question, or opens up the question, I should say. Do you think it's true that the health freedom movement, like I've been amazed that once I got deplatformed from the left, the only people who talk to me are conservatives and religious conservatives, especially. And that the people who are most alert to what's wrong here are very religious Christians and very religious Jews, like Dr. Zelenko. It's very interesting. And, very religious other people, no doubt, around the world. Do you think the very religious members of the health freedom community will reciprocate and be more open to members of the LGBTQ communities?
That was part of my hope too in making this, was, once again, not to debate the morals of homosexuality, but to point out what we are doing to people, right? And being someone that is religious, and reading accounts in the Bible of Jesus and understanding his work, and what he did on this earth, are we living like him? Are we treating people like he would treat people? And so I in the health freedom space, I actually can honestly say I don't know how they will respond, and I don't know how they have. There's particular instances that Riley and Irene shared where people make comments about marriage being between a man and a woman, and that making them uncomfortable. But I don't know, maybe someone will watch this in the health freedom space who is, that classically conservative, very, like you said, religious, and maybe think twice about how we are treating people when it comes to this, because, it was the same thing we saw with AIDS, which I wanted to go into this in the piece, and I ended up kind of just barely touching on it. It was a whole thing, and I wanted to do it right if I did it.
Sure.
But we did see, specifically gay men being seen as like these disease spreaders with AIDS, and being discriminated against, fired from their jobs, not getting the medical treatment they need, even if they weren't even if they didn't have HIV or AIDS. And so we've seen that, and then that comparison with the late night talk show that I put in there of him saying, "Oh, you're unvaccinated? Like, you took ivermectin, get out of here.
Right.
We don't want to treat you." I think we get into a lot of problems. We have to have consistent ethics. We have to have consistent morals. We have to look at how we're treating other people in the world and think, okay, am I treating this gay person the same way I would treat this unvaccinated person, or this white person, or this black person, or this person who is Jewish, or this person who's Christian? We have to have consistency, and that's an ideal utopian world. We're never going to have that consistency. There has to be artists like me out there who are pointing out, saying, "Hey, wait a minute! Like, did you think about this thing that you're doing?" And it's kind of scary. I mean, I remember I left that day. I went up on the train to see them, and I was on the train, and I remember just looking out the window with this like stone feeling in my chest, like, wow, they just trusted me with their story.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of afraid of what people are going to think when I make this, especially coming from the convoy space, these conservative kind of MAGA spaces. Are they going to watch what I made and take it seriously and treat me with the same respect that they treated me for the other pieces I've made?
Yeah.
Oh,
Claire.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just so proud of you, because the works that are the scariest are the ones that are the most important, as it turns out. But, I mean, I don't mean to tell you that prematurely, but that's if it's not meaningful, it's not going to scare you. Right. But sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
No, I that was kind of what I was feeling, but maybe not able to say, and you said it perfectly. I as I was watching it again live, I enjoy when we do the live broadcast, because I normally just don't ever sit there and watch it for my own sake.
Sure.
It's like I do the deep dive while I'm editing, and I go in and out, and I watch this section, this section, this section, but just to sit back and watch it. I was like, wow, I made that, and we made that together. And Riley and Irene, they opened up, and I was able to, with the help of the interwebs, pull all these clips and archives and really kind of get my point across. And even though it was scary to make, I think it's kind of hard to argue with, because I tried to just stick to one point, and that was the truth of Riley and Irene's story. So,
which is irrefutable. I mean, you can't argue with people's eyewitness accounts of their lives, right? Well, and the last question I have, this discussion leads right into that, which is the last piece you did one of the last pieces you did for us. You've done so many, I might not have the chronology correct, but I mean, so many wonderful ones. We might not have the chronology correct, but you did this amazing piece on the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I imagine that was super scary, because you were taking on your childhood cult. I don't know what else to say, your childhood belief system, the worldview, the subculture in which you grew up. Did you get any blowback from that? Was that okay for you? Did good things happen, bad things happen?
I think that was a moment where, being someone who still believes in God and prays to God, after I made that piece, I, went on some websites and saw some things and people were saying that were negative. And I remember just thinking, I'm going to learn from this, right? I saw the things people attacked, and I wasn't going to let that be something that, from the dark side that I allowed to kind of hit my creative heart,
right?
Or to wound me. But I wanted to see those things and learn from them so I could be proactive in the future and to be more mindful of my audience and what they think. And so I had family members that saw it, and I haven't really talked to because I'm afraid that they've seen it, and I don't really want to know if they have or not, right? And it's not that I was really, because of the nature of Jehovah's Witnesses and disfellowshipping, I was never baptized, so I was never officially shunned from the church, but I think making something like that would be considered what they call apostate. So,
oh dear, so young and already an apostate.
I know, right? Like, how did I do that? But yeah, I saw a lot of things. I did get some negative pushback, but I like I said, I took it as a learning experience, not as something that I would let it kind of scare me away.
Good. And while I'm sorry, Claire, am I interrupting?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, like, while you were speaking, I feel so lucky to have come of age as an artist before the internet, because you can hear the mean things people said about your work in the privacy of their, bedrooms where they're reading your book. I hate this book. That bitch.
Right.
Never heard it. And I do hope that creative artists, I hear you that, your instinct understandably is to learn and kind of be more conscious of your audience. But I guess, and I don't mean to turn this into a kind of like, I want to mentor you session like
fire away.
But I hope that you don't care too much about your audience. And that's a really hard thing, right? But the great, my hero is Walt Whitman, super gay, right? Gayest guy in the world. And, totally shunned in his lifetime, completely deplatformed, censored, lost his job, had a stroke, was super poor. I know I'm not making it sound super attractive to follow in his footsteps, but he kept telling his truth. And he knew that his audience was wrong. Right. And I guess that's what I want to share. I'm not sure to tell you what to do, but very often your audience can be wrong,
right.
Sometimes they'll say something constructive artistically, and your heart will know that's something I need to take on board for my next work of art, or maybe even for this work of art. But, I think we're living in a time where we're seeing that the consensus, conventional wisdom is super wrong, right? So people like you who have an inner compass and who have that Antigone spirit, which I love about you, which is just like, I answer to a higher power. I see another thing. I hope that the more public you are, the better known you are, the more you're going to hear from your critics and detractors. You'll probably get your own bots. You'll probably get your own trolls, And I hope that won't deter you from always listening to kind of the Walt Whitman in you, who's like, F you all. I know what I think.
I think it's like putting you're afraid of the monster in the closet and your kid, and the parent comes in and they shine the flashlight and it's like maybe a scary looking teddy bear. It was kind of like that with the JW piece. I was afraid to be vulnerable. And I think in not being vulnerable enough in that piece, looking back, gave people kind of ammunition to fire away at me. And so when I was making this piece, I kind of just thought screw it, literally screw it. I'm going to say what I want to say, and, you guys can do whatever you want with it. I'll put a few disclaimers in there for the people that I love, so that they really understand what I'm trying to say here and don't twist it around. Right. But it was that's what I was so afraid of, that someone would say those things. Okay, maybe the little girl in me got upset for maybe 5 minutes. And then I was okay, I'll be okay. And so that's what I'm hoping in this next piece that we'll be putting out next month, is to be even more vulnerable, and kind of open up more and more. Because I think you could see the difference, right, in that first piece from this one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love them both in different ways. But I think the direction to go in, and I'm not going to, I mean, if you have things to say that make you feel vulnerable, I would always encourage you to say them, because it's like, people don't want to hear this, but you know, when I get so many first drafts, you know, but people don't know their first drafts. And I'm sure the same is true for filmmakers. And I have to say to the writer, you know, often someone learning their craft, or, you know, that dividing point between the professional, someone who really is going to be a writer, you know, or a creative artist, and someone who just will never make that choice. Right. And it's a fork in the road. And often I have to say, you know, you have to rewrite this so it hurts. You know, that's where the real work begins. That's when it comes alive. Like, so much of what we do is to conceal and keep ourselves from feeling the pain or reliving the trauma or whatever. And that makes our work go dead creatively. And then when you are willing to kind of go in there and open your heart and feel it all again, whatever it is, that, I don't know why, it's a magical mystery of art, and especially film, I think, but that brings things to life. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm excited that you're following your instincts. And I guess my last question for you along those lines is, you know, given that I said to you, say whatever you want to say, how does that feel? Right? You have some trepidation about that. I mean, how's it feeling now as you go along that journey?
I think at first I kept on thinking, well, someone needs to tell me what to say still. Like, could someone please just still tell me? Because this is very scary. This is very scary. Like, and I made it. We've made 4 creative pieces so far. And
you made them.
Yes, exactly. I have made 4 creative pieces so far without anyone telling me what to say. And it's getting easier and easier. And it's changing the way I view the world now, which is really cool, right? So before I was like, you know, I always worked on other people's projects, being an editor. You know, I worked on several films before this, and with other, you know, smaller projects. And it was all, you know, I'm basically just the puppet master. Or sorry, I'm the puppet and someone else is the puppet master. And it's finally like, oh, you get to control everything. You get to do everything. So now, you know, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm living, it's like I'm watching my skill set, which is editing, filmmaking, and my personality and my creativity kind of come together. And I don't really see them, like, they're not quite there as I want them to be. But it's, you know, as I move through the world, as I said, it's, you know, well, I can make something about this thing, or like, what about this? And whatever, like, I'm feeling so inspired now. And it's not, you know, these self-limiting thoughts of, well, I did this in the past, that was successful, maybe I should go back to doing that.
Good. Yeah.
It's forward thinking. And it's just, I consider a great blessing to work with you guys for that very reason, because it's like, wow, someone really said to me, you can say whatever you want to say. And I'm not going to script anything for you. I'm not going to make any calls. You say what you want, and we'll support you and put it out there. That is rare, and we do not see that. And that's what DailyClout stands for. And I love that.
Thank you. Well, we feel very privileged to support such wonderful talents as yours. It's so exciting to watch you on this journey. We can't wait to see what you do next. I just want to add, you know, about this little dialogue we just had. I want to acknowledge Itana Hecht. She is a, you know, mother of 3 in Israel, and this fantastic writer. And I've never met her in person, but I became aware of her on Substack. And I have the same kind of mandate with Itana, which is like, tell me, you know, write about what you want to write about. Go. And she's like a, you know, killer investigative reporter. And I just love, especially with, you know, not to be sexist, but women are so often silenced. I love that thing of, okay, I've got greyhounds and racehorses, and I'm just going to set them free and, you know, see where they go. And it's so exciting because
thank you so much for that. Thank you for this opportunity. This film was amazing. The discussion was really fascinating. And it's so cool that we could just be here together digitally talking about the art we're making and how it makes us feel. And Claire, thank you for sharing all your comments about it. I just had one thing to say about, you mentioned just opening up that conversation. I mean, we're in the middle of a trauma, a years-long trauma, and that trauma requires conversation. It requires pulling apart what happened, pulling apart what needs to happen. And this is the beginning of that conversation. And I think DailyClout is a major platform where that conversation is happening, will continue to happen. And thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, and thank you, Claire. Thank you, Aitana, for being up at now 2 a.m. For all of you watching, you can find. Are we going to put your video up on DailyClout? I think we are.
Yeah.
And we'll also make it free for a premiere. For a time, it'll be free, and then it'll be for sale. And so tell all your friends, share it with everyone. It's such an important exploration. I hope people, both the medical freedom community and the LGBTQ community, and just the civil rights, human rights community generally, look at it, talk about it, add it to their curricula. I hope it's taught in college courses, because honestly, I'm old enough to remember the AIDS discrimination, overseen, by the way, by the same guy, Dr. Fauci. And, it was wrong then. The left knew it was wrong. It's wrong now. But we have to have these conversations. And this piece is such a beautiful teaching piece. I do want to say that our Pfizer book, I have to put this out there, is finally live. It's number 4 or 5 on Amazon Kindle nonfiction bestsellers. And I'm saying this to everyone watching because we only have 4 more days to keep it a bestseller in order to crack the nonfiction lists in legacy media. Very important for confronting the criminals with their crimes. It's what Pfizer and the FDA wanted to keep hidden for 75 years. And again, we're going to keep showcasing Claire Dooley's work. You can find her past pieces also on the DailyClout shop. And again, I recommend that you collect every single one of these films. They're collector's items. When she's getting the Golden Globes and the Tonys and the Emmys and all the awards just a few years from now, you're going to be really glad you have the collected work of Claire Dooley. And Claire, this is just so extraordinary. Where can people find you apart from DailyClout? Do you want to share?
Find me on Instagram. If you look at C.Dooley, you can find me on there. And my wonderful mother runs my Facebook account.
Oh, that's so cute. That's sweet. That's wonderful.
It's really sweet. It's really sweet. And then I also have a website, which is clairedooley.co. Which has a mailing list you can sign up for. And I'm a filmmaker, so I haven't done the whole web development thing. So, just sign up for the email list and I'll take care of you guys later.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Claire. Aitana, thank you. Go back to bed. Thank you all. And this will be, of course, circulating on social media. And please support the work we're doing at DailyClout. Support brilliant talents like Claire Dooley, Aitana Hecht, and the rest of the team. Thank you all so much. I'm going to say good night now. It's an honor to be with you, ladies. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.